SAT time's coming up in June. Pretty soon we're also going to do the PSAT National Merit Test. But for right now, I want to do one as quickly as possible on a real SAT sample. So I'm going to go ahead and record this. You can download these tests yourself and practice with them, but let's go over it. Some astronomers searching for extraterrestrial life have proposed that atmospheric NH3 can serve as a biosignature gas, an indication that a planet harbors life. Jin-Cheng Huang, Sarah Seeger, and colleagues evaluated the possibility, finding that on rocky planets, atmospheric NH3 likely couldn't reach detectably high levels in the absence of biological activity. But the team also found that on so-called mini-Neptunes, gas planets smaller than Neptunes but with atmospheres similar to Neptune's atmospheric pressure and temperature, can be high enough to produce atmospheric NH3. Guys, this passage is over before it begins, and it is so going backwards and forwards and paradox. This is what happened, but if you're used to reading, it's not hard. For those of you who are just getting used to reading, please don't feel bad or reading high passages like this. It turn things around. If you weren't paying attention with your teachers, just keep going over these. They get easier with time, but not always easy the first time. Okay, so what are they talking about? What would they most likely, these are the words you're looking for, agree about, and that's all you have to remember. Okay, these are the words you're going to do, and I'm going to put a red marker over him and say agree. Oops, I said red, didn't I? Okay, agree about NH3. Okay, so when you go on to the next slide, it won't be so hard to do. Okay? So it's at the bottom this time just because of our structure here and how we're reading. So let's just go on in. Some astronomers searching for extraterrestrial life have proposed that atmospheric NH3 ammonia can serve as a biosignature gas, an indication that a planet harbors life. Jin-Cheng Huang, Sarah Seeger, and colleagues evaluated the possibility, finding that on rocky planets, atmospheric NH3 likely couldn't reach detectably high levels in the absence of biological activity. But the team also found that on the so-called mini-Neptunes, gas planets smaller than Neptunes, but with atmospheres similar to Neptune's, atmospheric pressure and temperature can be high enough to produce atmospheric NH3. What this is called a circular argument. It's going into a circle. It's saying that you can't have this, NH3 is detectably high, and you can't have it unless, they couldn't reach these high levels unless there was human life, because it says in the absence. And again, the author is taking up all this extra language because he could just say couldn't reach detectably high levels without. He could also say he could also start this again and say without biological levels, without biological activity, you couldn't have NH3. And say it simplistically, but he's turning it around. And I say he, I don't know if it's a he or she, but I'm just using he for now. The team found that on many Neptunes, and they described to you what they were. They were gas planets smaller than Neptunes, but with atmospheres similar to Neptune's. Atmospheric pressure and temperature can be high enough to produce atmospheric NH3. Okay, so this is a circular argument. Nitrogen, hydroxide. If you had an MCHM or something, you'd have like your formula for crystal meth, but these threes and everything. So we're not even so concerned about that. The only thing we want to find about the ammonia here is that they're saying without biology, without life, couldn't be here. And then your end sentence comes out and says, yeah, but some many Neptunes have found that their pressure alone and temperature can give it. So it may not be biological atmosphere, it just may be able to do it on its own. So with that, knowing that that's particularly what they're saying, what are you going to say? Its presence is more likely to indicate that a planet is a mini Neptune than the planet is a rocky planet that could support life. Its presence is more likely to indicate that a planet is a mini Neptune. This is the opposite. So it's not A. Its absence from a planet that is not a mini Neptune indicates that the planet probably doesn't have light. So this is the opposite again of what it's saying. Its absence. And again, we need to go back over what the question is. Okay, but like we're saying its absence, they're talking about NH3. It should be treated as a biosignature gas if detected in the atmosphere of a rocky planet, but not if detected in the atmosphere of a mini Neptune. This is a possibility because that is what it's saying. It's a biosignature gas, meaning biosignature meaning that there is life. It doesn't reliably reach high enough with the concentration in the atmospheres of rocky planets or mini Neptunes to be treated as biosignatures. Well, this is a contradiction. This is exactly the opposite of what it says. Okay, so when we go on the next slide, we see we have two choices, and we're going to go over why we chose one over the other. Okay, so on the last slide, we basically had all of these kind of out. We had A out, and we had D out, and we came out to B and C. And here's the situation. Its absence from a planet that's not a mini Neptune indicates that the planet probably doesn't have life. Did they get into planets that weren't mini Neptunes? They did not. They talked about planets that look like mini Neptunes. They kind of said, and so-called mini Neptunes. They made a reference to it, but they kind of didn't distinctly give you that. So that's one reason B is out. Indicates the planets probably doesn't have life. Well, that's the same thing as them saying that some mini Neptunes can. This is yet another circular argument because it's saying, well, mini Neptunes can produce atmospheric NH3. So it's kind of like even going around a circle in its answer. They're saying, well, the mini Neptune, from a planet that's not a mini Neptune indicates it probably doesn't have life. That's the opposite of what it said up here about NH3 needs life. So it's saying the opposite about what Huang, Sarah, Seeger, and I'm sorry, let me be correct here. Jin-Chang Huang, Sarah Seeger, and the colleagues evaluated. So B's out. And if you look in your answer key, SAT Academic Suites, C is the answer. So again, we have a C. Only for an answer though. If you have any questions, here we are. Please take your time, go through some of these, and good luck on the test.